Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast, hosted as always by the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network on the YouTube channel. Brant, we had football this week. It's good to be back. It's good to have week one in the books. A lot of things happening in the NFL world. Rodgers' injury on Monday night was a big one. 4 plays as a Jet. I'm not sure that's what Woody Johnson and the organization was hoping for. But nonetheless, it happened. Deontay Johnson got banged up. We saw some other pretty decent injuries, and we saw some really good football, Brant.
J.K. Dobbins to the IR again.
It's his favorite place to be.
Yeah, it's my new Kenny Galladay. There was some good games, and there was some ugly games out there. There was some ugly offenses, some teams and players that people may be overreacting and underreacting to. And but it was good to have football back. It's remember, guys, biggest thing, it's week one. Calm down. It's week one.
It is. You're right, Brant. It's week one. We're going to come back. We're going to hit you guys with a week one recap, a Thursday night preview. Brant, let's get the bibs on.
And let's eat.
So, Brant, you kind of alluded to it before we hit the intro there that there's some things that could be overreacted on this week. If you talk about last Thursday's game, there's do we drop Kadarius Toney like he drops Patrick Mahomes passes? I don't know. I'm not going to talk about that one at all today, Brant, because I sure don't want to be wrong on either side of it, because Kadarius Toney's good enough. He could explode next week, or maybe he just has 4 or 5 more drops. I don't know. But there's a lot to overreact about this week. It's week one. Brant, you and I have found ourselves in the past do this, but it's easy to overreact after some things that happened last week. Some guys are stinkers week one, and then they're great the rest of the season. Some guys, Sammy Watkins, are great week one, and they're stinkers the rest of the season. So, Brant, why don't you go ahead and talk about something that you're not willing to overreact to? You're going to pump the brakes and slow down a little bit on.
I'm not going to overreact to the New York Giants offense and their team in general. They ran into some crappy weather. I get it. It was their home stadium. They came out flat-footed, and before you knew it, the Dallas was all over them. That Dallas defense is going to be a thing to reckon with in fantasy, in regular football. They are dangerous. And I'm not going to quickly overreact to Daniel Jones, just thrown to the wayside. Darren Waller, I've been saying it all offseason. I think he's still a top 5 tight end. Let's look at all the other tight ends and how they did. No tight end really leaped off the table to you. And the ones that should have, they didn't decide they wanted to play week one. So
sure.
I'm not going to overreact. We still don't know who the number one wideout really there is in New York. That defensive line did not give them any time. Brian DeBoer will get that offense back on track. I think Saquon Barkley is still going to be the center point of it. Darren Waller, I think, will still be the best pass catcher, and we're going to find it out. You just don't immediately think that that this is New York's back to being New York. New York Giants are not back to that. They have all the pieces there, and give it a little bit of time. And I'm not going to overreact to it. I think that team is ready to put themselves in the contention with that division. but that defense is scary in Dallas.
Yeah, Brant, I'm not sure I want to relive this, but I did call for the New York Giants to potentially upset the Dallas Cowboys on our Sunday morning live start sit. So I couldn't have been more wrong. I thought the Giants would show up ready to play. I thought Saquon and Danny Dimes would be out to prove that they got the money they deserved. I was sure wrong about that. But they weren't the only offense that struggled, Brant. We saw the Bills struggle on week 1. Josh Allen was struggling to find his rhythm. That's a little nerve-wracking, but these guys don't play a lot in the preseason, right? And that we kind of see that catch up week 1. If you look at this, there's 2 teams I want to talk about here for slow starts as well. And Brand, I might defer one of them to you because I think you watched that game a little closer than I did. But there's 2 teams in the AFC North that call that division home that got off to a really slow start this season. A lot slower than a lot of us expected. And the first one I want to talk about is the San Francisco 49ers just molly-whopping the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought that might be one of the better games of the week as far as back and forth, as far as good gritty defenses. If you remember at Brant on our Wednesday show, on the Redraft DFS show, I said this was the game of the week that I was excited to look forward to. I wanted to know a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions I wanted answers to. I don't like the answers I got out of week 1. I'll tell you that. Kenny Pickett, not ready to go. Clearly 31 out of 46, 232 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Najee Harris, was Jaylen Warren going to steal the backfield work? Neither one of these guys deserve the backfield. 6 carries for Najee, 31 yards, 5.2 yards per carry. So that's a little manageable. Jaylen Warren, 3 carries, 6 yards, 2 yards a carry. Then you get down into the offense, Brant, and I know I want to skip one name in particular because you're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Deontay Johnson, 6 targets, 3 receptions. Calvin Austin, 6 targets, 6 receptions. You go down to Jaylen Warren. This is kind of interesting, Brant. 6 targets for Jaylen Warren out of the backfield. He caught 5 of those for 12 total yards, so not a whole lot to write home about. Long story short, this offense was smothered. San Francisco's defense, when you talk about scary, they may be more scary than Dallas Cowboys, or at least right there with them, because I expect this Pittsburgh offense to be pretty explosive. They got off to a super, super slow start, Brant, but I still think there's enough talent. Talent wins. I like George Pickens a lot, who obviously I didn't say his name in there. Let me see if I can see what Pickens did this weekend. I own him in enough places. You would think that I would have some semblance of an idea. 7 targets, 5 receptions. So he had an okay game, just no yards, no touchdowns to go along with it. The 1 touchdown scorer there in that game, Brant, was a guy you and I both thought would never catch one. Pat Fryermuth did end up coming down with a touchdown catch.
I believe down with an injury.
It was his only reception of the game out of 4 targets. So Kenny Pickett was still showing a little inaccuracy. And then the other one in that division, Brant, so you had a divisional matchup between the Browns and the Bengals, right? And who thought looking into this game that Deshaun Watson would be the better of the 2 quarterbacks this week? I certainly wasn't one of them. So Brant, 82 yards passing for Joe Burrow total. Are we scared about what's going on there in Cincinnati, or is this an overreaction?
I think it's an overreaction to a lot of people. First off, you got to remember, Burrow didn't play at all in the preseason. He barely got any practice in. He just came back from an injury. I'm sorry, you're not going to target T. Higgins, 8 times every game and not complete a pass. The rhythm just wasn't there. And I'm not panicking on it. Jamar Chase was 4 of 9, if that. I could be wrong on those. It might be 2 of 9. I'm not 100% sure. That game was not pretty to watch. I'm not. Just the rhythm's got to get there, and that team will get back in rhythm. They're not just going to lay down and take it. That team's one of the best in the North, and they'll get back in it. I honestly believe they're going to get back in it this week going against the Ravens.
Yeah, I like them to bounce back again, too. I think, Brant, when you talk about a team that's too complete offensively to struggle the way they struggled, I just don't see that lasting. The other one that I want to talk about that I feel like a lot of people are getting really quick. I won't necessarily name the person, but I had somebody messaging me this morning talking about I'm out on Garrett Wilson because of this news on Aaron Rodgers. So my overreaction is people waving the white flag to Jets players' fantasy value. Brant, I know we had made all the jokes all offseason, Jets offense to the moon, because we were a year too early calling that. and that Rodgers was going to elevate this offense to the next level, right?
Achilles to the moon.
Oh no, his Achilles went back down. But if you look at this team and how this team performed in the absence of Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. Yes, I know it wasn't the high-paced, high-scoring offense that we were looking for. Breece Hall averaged 12.7 yards a carry on 10 carries. The man had a good game. Dalvin Cook was a little slow. That's okay. He only practiced for 2 weeks. I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of him week 1. I think him and Breece Hall both get going a little bit better as it goes. Zach Wilson, though, again, no first-team reps all offseason. That was all to Mr. Rodgers. So you can expect him to come in and be a little slow. He had a better game in this game on Monday Night Football on the biggest stage that he's probably played in his Jets career, Brant, against the Buffalo Bills. And he had a game that was probably on par, if not better, than what he performed in the past. He did have that one bad interception early in relief for Rodgers. But again, your timing with the wide receivers is off. The timing with the offensive lineman is off. The offensive linemen aren't used to the cadence. He had 21 total passes. He completed 14 of them, 140 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. I'm not mad about those numbers. They're not great. But the thing that is interesting to me is Allen Lazard still had 4 targets. Garrett Wilson caught all 5 of his targets and a touchdown. That's okay in fantasy. That's a salvageable week. I can live with that. Breece Hall also added a 20-yard reception on the ground. So Dalvin Cook, 3 receptions, 26 yards. I'm not upset about any of these fantasy numbers for the Jets, Brant. I think they'll be okay. Obviously, expectations come down lower. Garrett Wilson's no longer an elite wide receiver, but I think he's still a wide receiver 1, fringe wide receiver 2 this year. Look what he did last year with no Aaron Rodgers. Joe Flacco, Mike White, and Zach Wilson. He ended up being, a top 20 wide receiver last year, 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns. I still think he can get near those numbers with a higher touchdown increase. He's already got 1 this season. He only needs 4 more to beat what he did last year. So I'm not waving the white flag on this Jets offense at all. There's too much talent. Zach Wilson may hinder it a little bit, but we've seen bad quarterbacks have fantasy relevant players around them before. I think Breece Hall is going to be fine. I think Dalvin Cook's fine. And I'm not nervous about Garrett Wilson at all, Brant. No white flag here for me.
Yeah, I'm not nervous about that at all. Yeah, like you said, it'll take a little downtick. But all those guys are still going to be fine. We saw all those guys do what they were very well, minus Cook. They were salvageable last year in fantasy. So stop. And that was Monday night. They haven't had any practice together. Give Wilson a little bit of time. He's got a chance to sit behind Rodgers and learn the game a little bit better, I think. And he's going to have Rodgers on the sideline helping him maybe unless he goes in his darkness retreat. But
right.
He should have Rodgers on the sideline helping coach him up too. So I'm not waving the white flag. If anything, Wilson may boost the numbers than he did last year.
Yeah, absolutely, Brant. Absolutely. So again, let's not overreact to what happens week 1. If in week 4, if the Steelers offense, if the Bengals offense, if the Giants offense is still reeling and struggling to put points on the board and they're turning in fantasy bad performances, sure, we'll all be panicking. The whole world will be panicking because there's too much talent on those 3 rosters for people to coexist without their fantasy production. So let's slow down a little bit. Let's pump the brakes. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here, Brant.
Absolutely.
Let's go into some deep dives. Okay. I most waivers have processed at this point. The dust is settled on guys like Justice Hill and Gus Edwards and Josh Kelly and Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua. All these guys have slowly been picked up, Brant. Hayden Hurst. What's left out there that may be worth looking at? What's left?
So one of the biggest guys I like is a guy that you said it was a sleeper this year when you put him out earlier this year, and he's really going to step in and have a chance to really, really add to the role, and that's Allen Robinson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know Deontay Johnson's missing some time, and we know that offense is going to get going. If I could get this to pull back up, we know that the Steelers will get going. The offensive line's too good. They have too much, depth at receiver. And this guy has done this with terrible quarterback play. Well, he played 89% of snaps. He had 8 targets, 5 receptions, 64 yards. He had 13.53 fantasy points. And guess what? He was barely picked up this week. So he's still only owned in I mean, he's still just by this is dynasty. He's only owning 67% of leagues. If I went and looked at some redraft leagues or other things, that percentage is going to come down. Allen Robinson's a guy that I am targeting with a late pickup and putting him on the bottom of my bench and just seeing what this offense looks like without Deontay Johnson.
Okay. Definitely gonna be some targets to spare, right? Brant, I'm gonna tell you about a guy that I've gotten excited about in a very short amount of time. And it's gonna be due to the hindrance of one of your favorite wide receivers in the National Football League. This is a deep dive, Brant. Even in dynasty league settings, he's owned in less than 30% of rosters. This guy was drafted with the 100th overall pick in this year's draft. He is a rookie. I'm talking about Trey Tucker out of the University of Cincinnati. This guy got drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders. There's an immediate opportunity for him to step in and play after I don't know how many people out there saw the hit on Jacoby Myers, but it was one of the more vicious hits I've seen in quite some time.
I didn't need to see it to be sad.
He 1,000-yard stairs he laid on that field. You couldn't help but feel bad for him. He's having a hell of a game to that point, Brant. But anyway, Trey Tucker. Can I be honest for a minute? I didn't know as much about this guy as I probably should have because I was a huge Desmond Ridder fan when Desmond came out of Cincinnati. Desmond Ridder, I thought, was throwing all his passes to Alec Pierce. Apparently, Trey Tucker was pretty valid in that offense in Cincinnati as well. But here's the part that I'm really excited about, Brant. Davante Adams said Trey Tucker is one of the best rookies he's ever seen. Now, granted, Davante Adams in Green Bay, they drafted nothing but 5th and 6th round wide receivers the whole time he was there, and then the undrafted guys that come in. So it's not crazy that Davante hasn't seen a lot of talent at the wide receiver position. But Trey Tucker, he's coming in. He's got an opportunity. He was a healthy scratch week 1. So, again, not the most exciting stuff. But Adams's comments have come out. They've activated him. They say he's going to be involved in week 2's game script. I think there's a chance you see Trey Tucker come out and have 50% of the snaps. And if he gets 5 or 6 balls, he's 5'9", 185 pounds. So he's kind of the new frame that the NFL is going to. These slender, lightning quick, get it in their hands, let them take off guys. If this guy gets a few targets this week and puts anything out there, he's going to be one of the top waiver claims next week. So if your league does have deep taxis, if your league does have a spot where you can pick this guy up and store him, Trey Tucker of the Las Vegas Raiders is definitely worth an ad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I saw those comments and did a little deep research on him, but I didn't get too many notes out of him. But this is a guy that definitely could make an impact. That role of Jacoby Myers is wide open right now. I understand Renfro's there, but this guy could step right in and take that role. Mm-hmm. So mine is going to be another deep dive in redraft leagues. He's only owning 42% of leagues. He had 17.5 fantasy points last week, and he was RB number 8. Now, mind you, the scoring systems make difference. Some leagues. That's Roschon Johnson. I know he got a lot of work in garbage time, but he looked to be the more explosive back. He had, 5 carries for 20 yards. He did find the end zone, so that helped out. This is where it gets interesting. 7 targets, 6 receptions, and 35 yards. For a running back that you can go out and just snag right off the waivers, put on the bottom, this is a rookie running back. That running back room is wide open. Khalil Herbert wasn't too impressive week 1. The Bears' offense wasn't too impressive. But there's going to be bright spots. We see that in every year that there's a bright spot in every bad offense. This could be that bright spot. And he could immediately take over that RB1 role there in Chicago.
Absolutely. And Brant, part of me wants to say, wait and see what it looks like week 2. But again, if it's the same, this is one of them that you're going to have to go out and get now if you want him. Because next week, if he does it again, he's going to be a top waiver claim. You're going to have to use your waiver and your fab budget on him next week. Right now is the time to pick that guy up. But due to the fact that it was mainly Khalil Herbert early in the game, that's who they were looking at, makes me a little nervous. The Packers offense jumped out ahead, slapped them in the face. The Bears offense couldn't get anything going. And it's almost one of those things is, does that garbage time and those garbage time numbers really impress me that much? But Roschon, as an avid Bijan Robinson fan, I did watch a lot of Bijan film, and let me say Roschon Johnson was just as impressive in college. So I have no problem with this one, Brant. Again, probably shouldn't be on the waivers in your league, but if he is, He's probably worth a pickup because he's going to be pretty good down the stretch. I think it's just going to take him some time to probably get to the bell cow status or the heavy workload status that I think he ends up at. All right, Brant, I just had the one for us this week. Next week, you and I will be back on Monday on our normal time, maybe a little earlier before kickoff. But we're going to start coming back next week to get some of these waiver claims out ahead of time next week. I just couldn't remove myself from the Monday night game. I was being selfish this week. I had to watch that myself. And about 3 minutes into the game, I would have been fine to record. So, all right, Brent, let's talk about this Thursday's game because on paper, it looks like it should be a pretty good game. It looks like it should be, there should be some decent scores on the board. It looks like it should be fun at back and forth affair, but I'm not so sure it will be. We've got the Minnesota Vikings traveling to play the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly, Brant. What do you make of this game? What are you thinking about this one?
So Philly's offense is explosive. We all know that. We do know that they did start off a little sluggish to start the game this past week. Once again, it's week 1. And Minnesota started middle and end of the game was very sluggish type of game. They lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay. So that's Baker Mayfield. Now, I think that Philly should run away with this game fairly quick. I expect Goddard to be more involved. I know he had 0 targets or 0 points this week. But the OC came out and said that they want to get the ball in his hand a little bit more. So I think he's going to see some more targets. I expect Philly to really take off on this. That Minnesota defense is nothing to write home about. It's lost all of its players there. I expect this to be really one-sided.
So just real quick before I get into the Thursday game, Brant, I did see some highlights of the Bucs Vikings. And mainly the parts of the Buccaneers game where Baker Mayfield was mic'd up. I don't know if you saw those or not, Brant, but I went from like, okay, Baker's here. I could get behind Baker in Tampa. Maybe I'm rooting for him a little bit to like, okay, this guy's cringy and they need to take his mic off now. So there was a play towards the end of the game where he was willing to sacrifice it, take it out, took the ball, trying to get some gritty yards at the end of the game to salt the clock away. And he plows over a corner or something and he's screaming in his face, put on some weight, little boy. You got to put on some weight, like he's putting the team on his back. He's out there willing to sacrifice and fight and claw. And it's like, yes. And then, just a few short minutes later, he's in the huddle talking to his team about how they've secured the win and there's going to be group hugs in the shower tonight. And it's like, Baker, I'm not here for that with you.
Put that light on you, sir.
Yeah. So, but yeah, nonetheless, this game, Brant, I do think Minnesota sticks around early. I think they end up falling off late. They do just have enough firepower. I'm excited for Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson against the corners in Philly. I know Darius Slay is still there. I'm excited about that. I think Kirk Cousins is going to get sacked quite a few times by that front five there in Philly. The Philly offense, though, I'm confused. Kenneth Gainwell came out, busted it up this week, blew up, and now he's out. He's already been ruled out for this Thursday. So Rashad Penny, DeAndre, where are we going with this week? I don't know what to make of it. So again, I think this is going to be one of those backfields. It's going to be very frustrating to own, especially if you saw head coach Nick Sirianni's quotes on DeAndre Swift. He said some weeks his role is going to be what it was last week where he doesn't see the ball. Other weeks he's going to be the bell cow. So, I mean, if you're as a coach coming out and say that, you're basically just telling me don't start your running backs in my fantasy league because I don't want to be wrong. But yeah, I do think, Brent, I think this is going to be a game where I think last Thursday was too. Last Thursday would have been the best Thursday night game of all of last season because it was competitive. It was back and forth for a lot of the game. I didn't want to look away from the game. This week, I feel like it's going to be a very similar situation. Again, both offenses can be electric when they're hitting right, and one side of the ball does have a fairly good defense. So we'll see how that pans out. But as always, Brant, we are going to come at these guys with some underdog picks of the week, some plays that we're really vibing on for this Thursday game. And again, Sunday morning for the live start sit, we put out a few more. And I think we did pretty well on them this week, Brant, on our lives or our underdog picks. So I know I got one wrong, and it was voided due to injury, thankfully, even though he wasn't getting there. But Deontay Johnson, I had over 4.5 receptions, and he did get hurt prior to, but he wasn't getting there. But anyway, let's get these underdog picks of the week, Brent. All right, Brant, take me through your play of the week here.
My play of the week, Justin Jefferson, over or higher than 1 receiving touchdown. I expect him to find the end zone this week. They'll be playing from what I said will be what I believe will be from behind. I expect multiple targets. I expect him to find the end zone.
Okay. I've got 2 that I'm really torn on here, and they're both at the quarterback position. I'm not sure I feel great about either of them, Brant. But the first one kind of coincides with yours, and I think that's part of why I'm infatuated by it. Kirk Cousins higher than 37.5 pass attempts. He did this 11 times last year. He threw more than 37.5 last week. It feels like a game where they're going to be falling behind potentially, so I think he's going to have to do that again this week. And then the other one I think is also really interesting. I didn't realize – I knew he was mobile, but I didn't realize how often. Jalen Hurts higher than 9 rushing attempts. That was – pretty well right about 10 was where he was at last year on his average of takeoffs. He had 9 last week. Again, I do think this game could be a little more high scoring than the game last week. So I think you see him run a couple more times than just 9.
Okay. My, excuse me. My other one is higher than 62.5 receiving yards for Devonta Smith. I believe they're going to get out to a fast start, and I believe they get to the ball. All the focus will be on A.J. Brown like it should be. And I think Smith will find a long, deep ball to get. I think this could end up coming in about 3 receptions. I expect him to break 1 loose, and I expect him to be over this probably. I'm going to go on a limb and say he's over this in the first half.
Okay. All right. Brant, one last thing, one last parting words, because you've been an advocate for this guy in the past. Tell me what your stance is on Dallas Goedert this week. Does he get back into it? Is he back to being a top 10 tight end this week?
Yeah, I think he is. I think they want to get the ball in his hand. He's a guy that helps move the sticks a lot easier than trying to throw it deep. So I expect him to really get involved this week. His higher lower is at 4.5 receptions. So apparently Vegas believes he's going to get involved too. So I do expect him to be involved this week.
Okay. All right. Well, Brant, that does it for this week's episode. We'll be back same time next week, Monday, trying to come at you so you can get some waiver claims in on the Fatboyz next week. We will also be live this Sunday again. We had a decent crowd this week. Come join us, get some start sits, get some menu advice, and some DFS plays of the week, Brant.
Absolutely. As always, stay hungry.
And stay fat, my friends.